Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Green Team Academy 2024 Earth Week Summit. My name is Claudia Hurtado, and I will be the facilitator for this session, Caring for Oceans, Scuba Diver and Marine Biology Perspectives. Today, we have the incredible opportunity to hear from these two passionate divers and dedicated ocean activists who are dedicating their lives to protecting, educating, and spreading their love for the ocean. First, we will talk to Dr. Franziska Elmer, a marine biologist, educator, and the head of science at Seafield Solutions Limited. This company goal is to heal the climate and restore the oceans by using Sargassum algae as a powerful tool for carbon dioxide removal. So after Francisca, we will talk to Elsie Gabriel, who is a recognized award-winning Indian environmentalist and underwater diver. She has been recognized for her amazing contributions to marine conservation and environmental education. She founded the Young Environmentalist Program Trust and has played a significant role in various environmental initiatives, including the Oceans Climate Reality Project India. She is also the Ocean Quest Global Ambassador for India and the director of Poseidon Handicap Scuba Adventures, a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving the physical and social well-being of people with disabilities by teaching underwater educational programs to disabled individuals utilizing the Handicap Scuba Association guidelines. So her work emphasizes ocean literacy, sustainability, and promoting eco-friendly practices, particularly among women and students, to foster a responsible approach towards environmental conservation. These are amazing women. I take my hat off. So after this brief introduction, Francisca, please tell us more about that amazing research you're doing and the work of your company.
Thank you, Claudia, for this really awesome introduction. My name is Dr. Franziska Elmer, and I'm going to talk to you about how we can heal the climate and restore the ocean at the same time. And the main protagonist I'm going to talk to you about is this algae called Sargassum. So in the late 2010s, my life was looking like this. I was teaching marine biology, marine ecology classes, teaching students in their bachelor's how to do marine sciences, and doing so in the Caribbean islands with small classes and taking them in the water as much as possible. So we went diving during school time, we went kayaking, and we also lived with about 40 people in one place. So it was quite an interesting career, and being right at the water and being able to dive and snorkel for my job and teaching young people was amazing. However, in the same time, the IPCC report came out 2018 that said the time we have now until 2030 is the most important time in human history. What we are doing, our generation, the people who are alive right now, is going to affect the generations that come after us. This, together with Greta Thunberg and the climate movements that came out of it, really inspired me to do more. And I also realized that if those students I'm teaching how to survey coral reefs, they're not gonna be able to survey coral reefs once they are in their 30s if we are not taking action now. And just teaching wasn't enough action for me. So at that point, I was researching two different things. One was a new coral disease called stony coral tissue loss that is devastating Caribbean reefs even today. So you can see on the left, the coral is dying really fast. The other thing I was researching was these massive amounts of algae arriving on shores and killing seagrass beds, fish, affecting people's health and people's livelihoods. So it was between those two problems that I had to choose which one was I gonna invest my time in for longer. And believe it or not, I choose the smelly algae mainly because when it's not smelly yet, when it's more golden color, it actually has a lot of really cool properties and a lot of products can be made out of it. So while this algae is still a very big problem in the Caribbean, it's like a two-sided coin with the opportunity on the other side. It just takes enough people who are innovative to work on it to unlock those special properties and opportunities. So I started off after I stopped teaching. The first thing I did with Sargassum was actually in 2020 during the first ICAC, the International Climate. What, oh my God, I should know what it stands
Action
for.
challenge. You got
Action
it.
Challenge, yeah, International Climate Action Challenge. I'm very sorry, Joanne. It's a really great program that you should all go with. I think Joanne is offering it again this fall. So we used the International Climate Action Challenge to get our podcast started. And just a few months after we started our podcast talking about solutions and interviewing people, Seafields was born, the company I now work for. And the way Seafields was born is that a bunch of entrepreneurs who were looking for a solution for an alternative fuel for airlines because they wanted to start their own airline, they listened to one of our podcasts about using sargassum in big farms and using it for carbon sequestration. And they loved the idea so much that they got in touch with our guest, who was a good friend of ours or a good friend of my colleague, and said, "We love your idea. We want to turn it into a business." So that little podcast we started as part of our challenge now turned into a whole startup that I'm working at coming out of it. So you never really know when you start something what's coming out. So that was a really big change. And now I work full time at Seafields and I'm the head of science there. And also last year we started out of the podcast the Sargassum Champions course, which is an online course for people in the Caribbean to really learn more about sargassum so they can teach in their community about this problem. This was also very successful. So without us starting the podcast, we would have never started the other two things. For the rest of the talk, I will give you a bit of a behind the scenes view of what we're doing at Seafields. But if you want to learn more about sargassum, if the talk makes you curious, go on YouTube, go on Spotify, and you find our podcast and our sargassum course, and you can learn a lot about it there. So what Seafields does is this algae that floats on the surface, before it gets to the beach, we are putting booms out to keep it away from the beach, helping the hotels, helping whoever uses the beach to not have to deal with the algae. Then we harvest it with boats, and then it either goes straight into production to make these bales you can see on the right, or if the production is already maxed out for the day, because not every day the same amount of seaweed comes in, then it goes into our aqua farm. Our aqua farm is a place to store it and keep it fresh. So a little bit like a fridge, but unlike the fridges we have at home where what you put in, it never multiplies. It always becomes less because somebody else may eat it from you. This fridge works in a way that if you put sargassum in there and you keep it in there, you will have more sargassum afterwards. So it's like putting an apple in the fridge and then a week later you have 2 apples in there if you didn't eat any of them, which is pretty amazing. So once we take the sargassum into processing, we get important nutrients out, and then we compress it into a bale, like a hay bale. This is a small model of it. And from there, we sink it to the deep sea. Because sargassum is an algae, so it's a plant, it takes up CO2 when it does photosynthesis. So in its biomass, there is carbon. And by sinking it to the deep sea, that carbon is sequestered for a very long time. Why do we need carbon dioxide removal or carbon sequestering? Isn't that something that helps emitters buy themselves free of their guilt and keep emitting? That's a bad thing, right? Why would we have to do this? Yes, some emitters definitely use it that way, but we have progressed too far that we cannot do this. because in order to reach the Paris climate goals, all of the pathways show that we need to remove carbon dioxide. And we're still very far away from having methods that can do that at large scale. So we need to have research and development of a lot of different methods that can do that. And then our visionary, Emeritus Professor Victor Smetacek, his vision behind this is not just to help us reach the Paris climate goals, but to reduce the CO2 in the atmosphere back to pre-industrial levels, which is 280 ppm. At the moment, we are above 420 ppm. So his vision is to take all the CO2 that we took out, that we put out into the atmosphere, and slowly take it back to bring our Mother Earth back to how she was before we started messing with her. So why would you use sargassum? So the sargassum I showed you, the free-floating one, is called Sargassum fluitans and natans. And it's a pretty amazing algae. It's the only macroalgae that is buoyant and lives in the open ocean and is never attached to anything at the bottom. It is a great habitat for other species. There's over 100 different species of fish and crabs and other marine creatures that live amongst it, including baby sea turtles. Even though so many animals live around it, they don't really eat it. They more use it as a habitat. Like in a forest, they may not eat the trees, but they live around them. That's how sargassum works. So that also means when you want to farm it, you're not losing a lot of sargassum to animals grazing on it. And it can grow really fast. It can double in size in 7 to 23 days. So a little mat becomes a bigger mat, and that becomes an even bigger mat very fast. It grows a lot faster than land plants. And it fragments. So one piece of sargassum becomes two. So you don't have to have seeds and sexual reproduction as you have with some other algae and with some land plants as well. There's a lot of ways to valorize or make products out of the sargassum. So you can first make useful products and then use the rest of the sargassum to sink it to the deep sea and sequester the carbon. The C/N ratio says how much nitrogen you need to take in one molecule of carbon. So the higher that is, the less fertilizer you need from or nutrients from the ocean to grow your algae. And the C/N ratio at 34.5 is a lot higher than phytoplankton. So having sargassum in a place compared to phytoplankton will give you a lot more biomass for the same amount of nitrogen going in. It has a very large tolerance range for temperature and salinity, therefore can grow in a really big area of our ocean. And as you see, it's already very abundant. It's all over the Caribbean. There's a belt going all the way to Africa from here in Mexico. So it's not an algae that is rare at all. And it's a big problem that needs to be solved. So at Seafields, we take the sargassum, we extract the side product called a biostimulant, which is a type of fertilizer that removes the nutrients. It's a liquid, and it leaves a kind of a pulp. And then we compact it into a bale because that decreases the attackable surface area in the deep sea. And it also lets us precisely measure how much carbon we have sunk, because of course, if you're sinking bales for carbon, you want to sell carbon credits. And here just a few really cool pictures of our farm that we tested last year. And my favorite thing while working and researching the farm was doing fish surveys. As you can see, we had a lot of really small juvenile fish in the middle bottom picture, but we also had predatory fish. We had some pretty filefish and triggerfish. They're very aggressive, by the way, even the small ones. And we also had some middle-sized fish that really like to hang out under the sargassum. So as the sargassum mats in the open ocean, our farms become a little oasis for fish to hang out. And we even saw 1 or 2 spear fishermen come in the morning to grab some of these bigger predatory fish for their families. So our next steps this year at Seafields is to make a pilot study on the impact on the deep sea. It's really important for us not to create a new problem by trying to solve an old one. So we're working with the National Oceanography Centre in the UK, and we're going to go on a very fancy research vessels with a ROV and really figure out what is happening in the deep sea when you put algae down there, and is it safe. We're also going to try to see, can we put all these things together? Can we have our farm? Can we have the deflection barrier and the processing? And how is that working? How are the day-to-day costs in the actual real-world scenario? And we are working with the companies to get the carbon credits actually verified and get a carbon credit methodology going, because they don't exist yet for this type of work. So thank you all for listening. And as I said, if you want to find out more about this amazing algae that is causing so much trouble right now, listen to our podcast. We are on Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts.
Thanks so much, Fran. This is very interesting. I have a question. How you said that you use biostimulants to remove the nutrients before sinking it to the deep ocean. Is that correct?
Yeah, so what happens is we are pressing the algae, and during that pressing, it's losing most of the water inside, and it's a brown liquid that comes out. The brown liquid has some of the nitrogen and the phosphorus from inside the algae in it, but it also has a lot of the components that the algae produces itself to grow that fast and to be able to not be overgrown by other things. And that can be put into what they call a biostimulant. So it's not a fertilizer because it doesn't have that much nitrogen and phosphorus in it, but the biostimulant you can put on your plants, and then the plants will grow better. So it's an alternative to using commercial fertilizers out here now, which are also very carbon intensive. And it's also a way to bring back those nutrients that these fertilizers often bring into the ocean with when you put it on the field and then it runs off into the river and then into the ocean. The sargassum brings it back, and then the fertilizer put on the field comes from the ocean rather than putting new stuff in, and the ocean getting more and more of the nitrogen and the phosphorus that we put on the fields.
Okay, perfect. I would like to know if some of the attendees have maybe a question, because this is a super broad topic that it has many things to talk about. For example, what you said about the research to see if actually cause some kind of effect, adverse effect into the ecosystem when you dump it there. So I guess we'll have to wait until you update us with the results of the studies. So I would like to leave to the public, if they have some questions for you. How do you get your funding?
Yes.
There is one.
So we are a startup, and at the moment we are in research and development phase. So we are not yet making money. And our funding comes mainly from 2 different sources. One of them is grant funding. There's specific grants for startups, and there's specific grants for research that we can tap into. And the other way of funding is investors, so people who get shares of the company. And we are currently finishing up our seed funding source round, I think. So we've done a family and friends, we've done pre-seed, and I think now we are in seed funding. So that's about once a year we're doing a big fundraising to get big investors interested in actually investing into the company. Yes.
That's
It's a lot
great.
of work. The funding is a
Yeah,
lot of work.
I guess it must be huge, the funding you need to be able to rent or partner with these huge ships to bring algae to the deep ocean. So,
Yes, just renting the ship for 3 weeks to do research is 400,000 Great British pounds, which is about $1,600,000 US. That's just 3 weeks of renting the ship, including fuel. That
Wow.
doesn't pay for anybody's time yet that is then on the ship or their flights or anything.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
Okay, so Franziska, thank you so much for this. It's a great topic to talk about with whoever wants to contact Franziska. I put on the chat the website of Seafield Solutions so you can research more about what Franziska does and the company. So thank you, Franziska. And now we go with Elsie. So Elsie, please tell us more about your inspiring work.
Good morning, good evening, everybody, and special thanks and congratulations to Joan and her team and for hosting the Earth Week. Absolutely inspirational year after year, and it's been so much impact and so much knowledge sharing globally, which is a great feat. So congratulations. And thank you to Claudia for hosting this today. And Fran, you've been absolutely inspirational, and I'd love to join you someday for sure. All right. So I'm the founder of Young Environmentalist Program Trust. I started out with humble beginnings here in India when in 2005 we saw the international huge newsmaking calamity where the whole Mumbai city went underwater through an ocean crisis, like a tsunami, ocean disaster, where the whole city was underwater, cars were floating, and children were underwater neck deep. So I was a writer with the Times earlier, and then I was writing on environment and climate change and oceans. And then like we went to help, and then we said blankets and biscuits wasn't anymore. There had to be more intense research, and we had to gather momentum and use the power of citizens, scientists, and the community. And so I gathered a group of women, and that's how we started to research. And we found that the rivers and the outlets of the water that was flooding in the city was blocked because of the plastic bags. And therefore, we started off with the basic concept of ban on plastic bags and using our community to propagate this. And it was very challenging. And then we carried on a number of research among the communities. And one strata and segment we found was education. Education is key, especially for a country like India, developing country. We said that we need education in environmental science, which wasn't a compulsory subject. Till now, it's still not a compulsory subject. Though I've made a big, huge paradigm shift now into ocean literacy, but that's where we started with climate education when I was trained by former Vice President Al Gore in 2014 in Brazil in climate education and community enhancement. And then we evolved, and now we focus on oceans. And of course, it's been like over a decade where I've been a diver, a deep sea diver. And I was diving for recreation and for health and mental happiness and happiness quotient, and getting a lot of young people to dive as well. And then later on, I got trained by HSA, which is Handicapped Scuba Association. And that involves now I am assisting to train for climate disasters and preparedness for climate ocean crisis and tapping on the resources of young and the youth. Like my program is called Young Environmentalist Program Trust. And so we use surfers and divers to use the medium of ocean literacy and a special diving training where they can assist the women, children, and disabled and senior citizens, especially with cognitive disabilities. Sometimes disabilities are seen and not seen. So you never know who gets affected in an ocean crisis or a climate calamity that occurs in the coast and the ocean areas and the islands. So therefore, my diving has taken me there. So basically, I've evolved, and here I am. And we focus on the youth basically because we felt our research saw that the climate education, ocean literacy, as well as environmental education was missing. as a compulsory subject in India. Of course, it's very big at the research level and postgrad and PhD level, but a very tiny, minuscule percentage. And then globally, we found that many do the research for their own personal education reasons and their careers. And it's still at a younger age where children are still forming in their minds. They're still making up their minds to join a career. And then there wasn't an option for oceanography or marine biology or environmental law or ocean sciences. We needed all hands on deck when we joined the Climate Decade Program Action, which we have endorsed. We've got it endorsed by the Climate Ocean Decade. So we need to put all hands on deck, and we felt that the youth need to be involved. And another group we saw that was citizen scientists, ordinary people who may not be postgrads, who may not be working, but the community at large. We found 40% of that segment actually doing groundwork, right from fisherwomen to fisher folks and their families and communities who may not be scientists, but immense traditional knowledge. So we're trying to bridge the gap between traditional knowledge and scientific knowledge and use that as the modules of ocean literacy. And we are also trying to lobby and make it a policy, working with the governor. And now he did do the foreword for our book just launched on ocean literacy for the next generation, which we also got a chance to share and launch at the Ocean Decade held recently at Barcelona. And then we shared it also at Athens, our ocean conference, with many of our colleagues. So that's our journey. So in the first slide, you can see a group of women up there. And this one is informed community and training the trainers. It's very few people globally know that India has many islands, tiny islands. Of course, we do not belong to the SIDs globally, but we face the same disasters, same challenges, and we are all locked in. And so we have over 20, 30 islands on the west coast and another dozen islands on the east close to Thailand, in fact, called the Andaman Islands. And some of the beaches are like named as number 3 by BBC. They're so pristine and beautiful. And we have tribals and people working there and trying to live against all odds. And in the Lakshadweep Islands, where I focus my research and my studies, we have 12 inhabited islands and they're all locked in. And the government as well as the community doesn't know how to find or get all the plastics that's used, and just not plastics, but all the garbage that's used, shipped out, which is very expensive, back to mainland, close to India, which is Kerala or the mainland. So we got the community going and we started small. And this is a very good example of how ordinary citizens came forward and then the group grew. And then we had a college, and believe me, it's an arts and science college, but then even the tourism department college who was studying sustainable tourism, we got them in as well. If you have to have sustainable tourism on islands and promote Lakshadweep, Fran would love it and invite everyone of you to come. It is, I can compare it to the Bahamas and Caribbeans, where I've dived in 10 islands in the Caribbeans and the Maldives. The visibility is more than 25 meters. So it is absolutely untapped Virgin Territory islands, beautiful. And therefore, what happens to all the plastics that come in is it's collected from the beaches. And then we still haven't got funding. We need the funding for a shredding machine, and so that we can start making products for it. But in the meanwhile, we have started using these, filling them with tinier plastics and wrappers, and well as clay and sand, and making brick walls. So here you can see a lot of women, and they are tribal and indigenous women giving their time after work and after education, and lots of them are students. And it's a society which is not very outgoing, and they know they're not the islands very well, and they know their own backyard very well, but they're totally helpless as to what to do with the plastic pollution that's happening. Next slide, please. And here in the city, we have a group of women who we train, and individually we train the trainers so that they can go forth. And we do have about 600 schools right now. and these students are taught ocean literacy. Now we find it a big challenge here because the teachers are underpaid, and the schools in India, most parts of Asia, as well as globally, we've been studying, are still focusing on their 5 or 7 core chapters. And how do we put ocean literacy as an important segment of the curriculum is also part of our work. And we try and integrate it in all the subjects, that is English, maths, biology, and of course all the 3 sciences, and geography, of course, automatically. But it is still a challenge. So I'll give you a small example. When the principal says, no, we don't need ocean literacy right now, or environmental science, we can't see it. We're still focusing and struggling with the kids finishing off with the 3 hours or the 5 main subjects and getting on to the next class. So it's still a struggle, and the teachers don't want extra work. So how do we do it? And then we said, okay, just take an example of your national language or your state language or local language or even English. Like in the city of Mumbai, all the schools that we have under us, like 50% or 60% of them are English. International schools, state schools, as well as local schools. And so for English, I'll give you an example. And for all our listeners here, I'll turn around the classes for environmental reporting and newspaper article submissions and formatting English language essay writing into research writing on oceans and whatever they observe in their field research work. And then again, we of course incorporate geography on learning about the oceans globally and the marine life. And then again, for the sciences, we try and make their projects, which are compulsory, and they could do it on cancer patients or poverty-stricken people or underprivileged Hutmans and what have you. There's so much more underlying issues in our developing country. So it's so hard to make ocean literacy the key focus. So we're still struggling, but we try and give them an incentive where they field research in the oceans and the lakes and the rivulets and even the streams and the sewage drains, which actually lead. And the students are so smart now. It's so beautiful for them. Like one of my young students came up, I'll give you another example, and said, ma'am, it's not fashionable anymore, like to just collect plastics on the beach because the next Sunday it'll all be there again. So what is the government doing? Why is it there again the next Sunday and the coming Sunday? So we said, okay, are you ready to go to the other side of the oceans, which is right from the back of your kitchen door, a plastic audit in your house, in your bathrooms and your kitchens. So the students also do plastic audits. And during the COVID and the pandemic, it was our biggest success story, where through webinars every day in and day out, we established ocean literacy. It was a very blessing in disguise. They were all locked in and there were no very many classes held. And therefore, ocean literacy, we made it exciting for them. And they did plastic audits inside their homes and kitchen and replaced it with glass. So that was a success story of the pandemic and how to infuse ocean literacy to the common man and how to garner interest and participation from society, different stakeholders. Next slide, please. So these are a group of teachers and they've been working in various schools. Next slide, please. So these are the field trips which we take them and make them exciting. And then we teach them the methodology, the documentation, and research. And again, this we try and utilize the spare class periods that they have during the entire curriculum timetable from like 8 in the morning to 3 is their school here in India. And we try and infuse that and get it into their subjects. And if we did flamingos coming in from Iran and Gujarat and the pink birds, they come in like lakhs and 10,000s. And from where did they come? Why did they come? Climate change, and make it exciting for them. And that's how we ignite more enthusiasm in the youth. And we felt that it's a time between 12 to 14 or 16 where they make up their minds to really choose a career. And our children were not getting an option or an exposure to choose or even think about oceanography or marine sciences or marine biology or anything about oceans, and many of them haven't seen oceans at all. So it is a hard struggle. And if you make it two sections, formal education as well as informal education. So we're trying to get the government also to make it a policy so they don't feel impelled to like really fuse it as a compulsory subject overnight. It's not going to happen. But if we use informal education, I think we can involve a huge percentage of the youth. Of course, everyone knows that globally we have 30% of the youth. And by the time they're in high school, they love to get involved in social projects and national projects. And many of them now have started representing India. And of course, many of my youth globally are invited to the international conferences where they can voice their opinion and also lend their new gen expertise on social media and creativity and put a voice out there and to campaign. Getting the youth to get the success story and to fulfill all the action and challenges of the ocean decade is our mission that we're working on. Next slide, please. So here the research going on the water hyacinth here. They look like seagrass, but they're not entirely like seagrass, but these have roots. And these are like parasitical, covering up parts of the lake that flows into the river, into the ocean, and encroachment and eutrophication. This is how we get these subjects interesting by hands-on formula for the students. Next slide, please. And then we involved a lot of diving, going into the ocean. And then we discovered that, of course, it was all very nice to see beautiful marine creatures all over the world and get knowledge and documentation of your sharks and your own backyard, your turtles and their population and then you come back to your classroom and you really find that the students really believe in the mission of why we need to focus on ocean conservation because they've seen it. So through our diving, we realized that we had to, if there's another tsunami or another disaster or calamity, or even a city flooding. I mean, a couple of years ago, I think just last year, New York got flooded. They have all the infrastructure, all the money, and all the municipality in place and still got flooded like Mumbai did. And that's where we started. And so are many more places, whether it's a high-end city or whichever part of the globe. Climate disaster sees no age, doesn't choose. It just is, it's an onslaught, and people are beginning to recognize that it can happen anywhere. So therefore, we started training the divers as part of their diving curriculum, where they do take them out for recreational diving, but then they can be more than that. So I'm now training the divers and the surfing community to be ocean literate and know your own backyard, brag about your own backyard and say what it's all good about. And also talk to your clients on the boat when you go out diving. Talk to your clients and convert them into ocean literacy. And it's saving each starfish from the beach and putting it back in the ocean. That story we learned in childhood. So every client that you meet on the boat, the diver can speak to them about the sharks and the fish and the turtles and conservation and convert each client. And I believe in the power of one. And then therefore now the divers are learning about ocean literacy, and so are the surfers. And they do get involved in ocean cleanups. But we went one step further, and now we train them in HSA, which is the Handicapped Scuba Association based in California, USA. I've trained myself. And therefore, this teaches them a special training. If there's a disaster or a cruise ship come in and you've got senior citizens or you've got a disabled and a family with kids, who's going to save them? The special segment in the city or like on the ocean or the islands, who's going to save them in a special requisite that is required, like you have to be specially trained to handle them. And therefore, we are now training them globally. We have launched the ocean accessible tourism in the Philippines, in the Maldives by the government of tourism. And now there are more people with disabilities coming in for tourism. And it's a win-win situation where you have the rights of disabled recognized and in their fight against climate change as well. and the divers now equipped to be handling in disaster management during ocean crisis. So next slide, please. And of course, this is also part of incorporating formal. So the divers here in their spare time are making art out of the waste that they collect when they do go out diving. And if it cannot be recycled, how can they teach the rest of the community, making it fun and trying to slowly involve them? And that's we do it through art. So we have a lot of artists in the stakeholder community of citizen scientists. Next slide, please. And here we've got the governor of Mumbai. He recently launched our book on ocean literacy that we've been collecting all the modules over the years. And he's endorsing our t-shirt here. So we are pushing for the education department and the governors here. I do attend all the conferences globally. And over the years, and I've said, there's something missing. We are discussing so much, but still there hasn't been a policy in place where many more governments, there are a few governments in the countries who've already adopted compulsory climate change and ocean education on their curriculums. Many governments, like a few, but what about the rest of the world? So each time I went global, I came back to think local. And I said, what do I do when I come back speaking all over the world? And then I said, I must get my government to also make it a policy. So that is our governor of Mumbai. And we are pushing to enforce ocean literacy as a policy here in India. That's part of our work that's presently going on. And this, you can see a huge community. We gathered momentum. And we also started, this is a lesson on the beach. Some of them, as you can see, are fishermen. Some of them, as you can see, are divers and ordinary citizens and the islanders. And unfortunately, there is a small research that we carried out. And whether it's the Caribbeans or the islands here in Asia or anywhere in the world, like many of the community people are still scared of going out in the ocean. Their children and the mothers and the families are like saying the ocean has taken away so much from us. And the ocean, like we still don't want our kids to be divers. And we're still scared of the ocean. And so we had to break this myth and we had to tell them that no, you can come out. And there's now more scientific methods and more safety. And you can join our diving classes. So this is when half the village was out. And we get the leaders from the villages out here and we train them. And they can in turn become course directors and train the rest of the communities. Next slide, please. And of course, we have incorporated SDG goals in the ocean literacy and connected them with just not goal number 14, which has 14 number 1, 14.2, 14.3, 14.4, like 14 till 12, point 12. But we also tried to integrate the oceans and the SDG goal of 14 with the other SDG goals. So everyone gets involved, right from sustainable tourism, as education, stakeholders, poverty, increasing skills and incomes for low-income groups in the coastal and community areas. And next slide, please. And then eventually we did launch the Ocean School in India. It is a place in Lakshadweep Islands where students can come and dive and learn about this. And we mostly welcome the city folks who haven't seen an ocean before in their lives and to come and have hands-on experience and internships there. Next slide, please. Okay, I think that's the last of the slides. Anyway, this is our work that we've been doing, and we welcome everyone to look at our website as www.youngenvironmentalistprogramtrust.org as well as oceanschoolindia.org. And education is key, and I'm hoping that more young people can join us. And we feel that they do have the power to be part of the policy-making decision, to be part of this movement. And they need to be given a platform and an audience. And of course, we are more experienced mentors now over the years, but we've got to pass on this legacy to the next generation. It's time to hand over to them just not a clean plate of our leftovers, but also with skills and education, so that not only they choose careers to help our planet and ocean conservation, but also become empowered and powerful speakers and action oriented youth, and who bring measurable impact to the area of ocean. And I'd like to end here by saying, like Sylvia Earle, she is my guru and my mentor. I met her on several occasions where she says, without blue, there's no green. And it is so true, because Fran said the ocean is a carbon sink, and so much of the planet is covered with ocean. And if the youth can be really ignited and educated about this, we have hope, and the youth bring hope. So therefore, we are focusing with these modules and these works, outline of works, and that's been our mission, and invite everyone to join us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Elsie. This was amazing. I've never seen a person do so many things almost at the same time, it seems. So I wonder, how do you empower students according to your experience? Because sometimes I was a teacher from third grade to ninth grade, and normally the older ones were not very excited about it. So I don't know if you have the same problem, or you have found a way to inspire them and that they get excited about doing something for the environment.
Yes, it's very challenging. I have got complaints like city schools, if their shoes, sneakers touch the water, they will sue me. They come up and they've never seen the ocean, or never come out to see sewage flowing into the river, which goes into the ocean. And they say, yuck, ma'am, we're not coming for this field trip. And then they're like international schools who say, oh my God, like my shoes can't get wet, or I can't wear gloves to pick up plastic and clean up your garbage. It's you adults who dirtied it. So we get such sensitive social messages from our youth itself. And I say, oh my God. So they really need to be sensitized. And then it's hard. And till we don't give them incentives like grades, and we try and incorporate that into additional project grades, and they get marks for it, which is added to their report card, and they do well in it, and their report card gets, the percentage gets elevated, then they feel, okay, we can join academically and it's going to bring me some worth. Then we tell them that you're going to be our youth family for life. So we have certificates, reference letters to keep on educating them. And just not in ocean and environment, but any subject. Like I tell them, tomorrow you want to apply for law in masters and you need our help, we're there to mentor you. And you're now a part of our ocean family. And then they feel nice, because you do need reference letters to carry on your further education. And so we give them certificates and t-shirts and prizes and team building. And then another thing we do is spiritual ecology. And all our field trips are just not head-on documentation and analysis and data collection and conclusion and incorporation into the curriculum project, but also getting them to detox from their digital world and coming out to really back again to feel the planet and get sensitized about the ecology outside. Then we use photography and things like that, competitions where they use their camera skills and art and everything. And that's how it's been. And it's still challenging as the days go on. We come up with new challenges every day, but we find new ways and we throw it back into their court and we tell them, you tell us what would you like that make you exciting. So we make them part of our team to help revise our modules as well.
I wanted to say something. I know when we talked earlier, Elsie, you said that one of your strategies, which I thought was very clever, was being a substitute teacher, and that some of your team will be substitute teachers so that you can get direct access to the kids and have that kind of form those relationships. Because I think substitute teachers have a special thing. Everyone's glad to have a sub come in. They're a little bit more generous with what the substitute can teach. So that was really sneaky. I liked it.
Yes. Having done education honors in my graduation, like I do have teaching skills. And again, we train the trainers. And then these are the loopholes where we try and block. Like the schools love substitute teachers, and we're there 24/7. So they just give us a call and say, Elsie, one of you can come in, and then we say, yes, why not? We're looking for a window. We're looking up like where we can fit in, because like I told you, the doors aren't entirely open. They're still closed. So any window like that, being a substitute teacher and converting that class into a science of ocean and environmental science, that day has been a success day for us. So we love to offer services for substitution. Yes.
That's great. So to finalize with Elsie, what's your next step? I'm excited to hear it. So many things.
Yes, we are focusing on two main things. That's ocean literacy in schools, which is already on its way and it's established. But we're looking for more schools. And the one on the disability training for divers is, again, a huge thing that we've been training globally. So these two are our future projects. And we do get calls from all over the world where a group of divers want to train. Sometimes they're underprivileged, like Sri Lankans. The Sri Lankans get so much of tsunamis and disasters, so we don't charge them. And we say, no, if you can get your fisher folks, and we try and sponsor the dive boats and the equipment and get them out and do this HSA training, and they have an extra skill. And some of them joined the disaster management team. They say, ma'am, the tsunami isn't coming. I said, pray it's not coming. And we are all working very hard, the whole global conservation team. And all of us here, this whole Earth Week celebration is about pushing for momentum. So people like us here, right now, I said, pray, we're all working very hard that these don't occur. But what about preparedness? So you guys have a skill. And so that's one mission that I'm working on, training HSA and disability diving. And I think it is a call for the future, because we were invited by G20 by the government of India. It was held in India this time for accessible tourism, which is very important, sustainable, accessible tourism. So we're focusing on these two-pronged, ocean literacy as well as accessible ocean sustainable tourism. And in tandem, it goes together, because we need our dive boats, we need our divers, and then it's in tandem with each other. So we're moving together on that. That's our work.
That's amazing. I would love that to expand to other countries, because not many times you can find accessible diving. I've never seen it anywhere else.
Yeah.
So thank you
any
so
of
much.
our listeners, I invite you to connect with me. And if you do have a group of any part of the Caribbean or any part of the world that you feel you're connected with, any underprivileged group, and you want your training in PHSA and HSA, we're most welcome to come and give them the training. It's a 5-day course. We give you the modules, we give you the handbook training, and we certify you with a card, a registered certification card. So you're absolutely skilled and certified, and you can take this forward. So I'm offering this especially on this webinar, that we will sponsor it. Anyone coming out of this audience will be the lucky ones. Yes. So you just tell us which part of the world you are, and it's a 5-day training, and we would love to come across and train. So this is an open invitation which goes out for the Earth Week and celebration of planet Earth.
Could you please let me know the name of the certification and the training, so I can put it here for the people that is interested?
Okay, it is www.phsa.us.
Yes.
And they can write to elsiegabriel@gmail.com.
Gabriel at gmail.com.
Gmail.com. And of course, our website is Young Environmentalist. Yes.
That's amazing. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claudia, for helping me personally through this.
I was going to say too, it sounds like, Franziska, you have been to those islands. Wait, you're muted.
Yeah, I'd love to work with Franziska on seagrass, as well as training her divers too. Franziska, just tell us when you're free, and our course director and our chief of course director, I will get the best director, the course directors, seniors to come across to your islands and train in the US or wherever you are.
Yeah,
I'd
no,
love to
that
work with
sounds
you.
awesome.
If there's
I
a
personally
disaster on
don't,
your
yeah,
boat or like your community, or there's any
yeah.
area you feel that you're working in which is tsunami prone, you just reach out to me and we'll come and train them from our side for this Earth Week. You just get in touch with me.
Sounds really cool.
Franziska, you mentioned that you had been to the Andaman Islands.
Yes, I was
Oh,
there
wow.
in 2018. I had a few months of traveling between my job in Bonaire and in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And a
Okay.
good friend of mine, he was sailing around the world, and at that point he was in the Andaman Islands,
Okay.
and we sailed for 3 weeks across the Andaman Islands, mostly to islands that were completely uninhabited, and just
Wow.
snorkeling every day, making our
Wow.
own water, just living life. It was
Yes.
amazing. I've seen the
Yes.
biggest corals I've ever seen, twice my
Wow.
size, like twice as long as me, just a huge boulder, like as big as a
Wow.
king size bed or bigger, like a huge corals.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing place. It's
Yeah. It's
very dear to my
wilderness.
heart.
Just,
It's wild.
just yeah, wilderness and beautiful and very local, and it's still untapped commercially. So it's still pristine and beautiful, and jungles and everything, mangroves, everything. So I hope you come to India again, all of you. Anytime you're in India, please let me know. And of course, thank you, Joan. Once again, you're doing an excellent job. Thank you so much for guiding me and pursuing and guiding me to be on this. And I'm so grateful to be part of your family now. Thank you so much.
Yes, indeed. And it was so great, Franziska, because when you started, you were just going to be a mentor for marine biology. And then you decided, oh, what the heck, let me do the challenge. And so then getting the podcast going. So, yeah, you never know where things will go. Yeah, it's a great story. So, thank you for coming back and like that as part of the family. Really appreciate it.